Current market conditions are actually very appropriate for factor investing. If you look at what we're seeing in the marketplace, we're seeing the economy start to slow down and we're seeing high levels of volatility. For those two instances, a combination of those two, what comes to mind from a factor perspective is low volatility, our SPLV, and quality, our SPHQ. In addition to that, investors are facing a great amount of concentration in the cap-weighted S&P 500. If you might know that the top 10 names make up about 30%, and that is the highest that we have seen going back to the 1970s. In addition to that, the S&P has become more growthy. It's drifted towards growth. And so one way to mitigate or manage that risk is actually through equal weighting the S&P 500 so that all the names have the same weight and you remove that concentration and growth bias which has been present in the S&P 500 market cap. Multi-factor ETFs can be used as part of the core of a portfolio so that one could hopefully generate excess return across the market cycle. The multi-factor approach kind of makes it easier for your average advisor or average investor to get factor exposure across different factors and do it in a systematic way where they don't have to worry about combining the factors or navigating the economic environment. Typically, when we look at multi-factors, what you see them doing is combining them with kind of their core of the portfolio or actually blending them in. So here at Invesco, we have a couple ways to do that. One, we have a quality value momentum suite, very low tracking error, very market-like, but still providing factor exposure. We also have a deeper factor exposure, dynamic multi-factor. The ticker there in the large cap space is OMFL. It looks at the market environment, measuring economic growth and the level of risk, maps to the appropriate factors, and then evaluates the environment monthly. And if needed, it can change the factors. So it can rotate and map to the factors as needed back for the environment. And in addition to that, it provides very rich factor exposure. So single factors can again be blended with kind of a broader core of your portfolio to get targeted exposure. They can also help one more tactically bet on what's happening in the current environment. So for example, if we come back to low volatility, if we are in a period where volatility is expected to rise and growth is expected to slow, we can map into low volatility to essentially try to participate in the market strength, but also mitigate risk. So it becomes a little more tactical or complementary to the broader portfolio when you get down to single factors. I would say that you can combine single factors together to also help meet the objectives that you're trying to achieve in your portfolio. So if you look at how Invesco presented, there was a session that focused on QQQ and talked about the innovation that took place taking place during this economy that we're in and how QQQ provides access to that. So my colleague Ryan McCormick was on the stage talking about innovation. And not only did he do that from a QQQ perspective, but he also talked about QQQM, which is the same NASDAQ 100 in a 40 Act ETF wrapper. And he also talked about the Next Gen 100, which is those stocks 101 to 200 that are listed on the NASDAQ. So that was a really good session for understanding innovation, how to access innovation, and really how to take advantage of the growth that's taking place in our economy and globally in terms of what we are seeing. Myself, I did a session on factors, defining factors, talking about the uses of those factors, and really tried to ram home the point on why every advisor should have factors in their portfolio, because they really can provide longer term benefits and help meet goals and objectives that the client of the advisor has. So factors have been around for a long time, and if you go prior to the commercialization of the ETF, you just had big institutions, hedge funds that could afford to and manage kind of the big turnover that can be present in factors. The ETF is great for factor investing because It's very transparent, so you understand the methodology that helps provide access to the factor. Very low cost, so they're inexpensive to implement. You also have a wrapper in the ETF which shelters the tax liability that can be present when you turn over. Factor investing, when you do it, there's turnover because the strategy has to grab those factors that are most relevant at the time, and that causes a lot of turnover in the stock portfolio. But the ETF wrapper can help shelter that. And we have many factor-based ETFs that have seen high turnover and have paid zero capital gain. The ETF unit is also very scalable, so it's easy to kind of ramp up your exposure or cut back your exposure if you need. At Invesco, we tend to specialize in factor-based ETFs. My personal focus is on factor in core equities. And so what we offer is essentially access to strategies that are non-market cap weighted. Factors are groupings of stocks with similar characteristics that are also weighted by that special characteristics, and they offer a differentiated return and risk profile relative to market cap.